You killed a lion, a cave lion, an extinct species roughly 10 to 25% bigger than any African lion alive today, with nothing but a wooden thrusting spear. And it worked. The lion is dead. You are alive. Your group is alive. And right now, everyone who doubted you is looking at you differently. Tonight, you eat the thing that was trying to eat you. That's not a metaphor. That's not a story. That is exactly what happened at a site called Siegsdorf in southern Germany approximately 48,000 years ago. Documented in a study published in Scientific Reports in 2023 by Gabriele Russo, a zooarchaeologist at the University of Tübingen, a nearly complete cave lion skeleton with a puncture wound on one rib, consistent with a wooden thrusting spear, clean, deliberate, a kill, followed by cut marks on multiple bones indicating the carcass was processed, defleshed, butchered, the oldest direct evidence of a large predator kill in human history. And it was Neanderthals who did it. This was not an accident. This was not scavenging. This was a hunt. And what came after the hunt is why this video exists. If you've ever eaten something and immediately regretted it, what you're about to hear is the ancient prototype of that experience. On a catastrophically different scale, drop a comment and stay with me. Here's something that doesn't get talked about enough. The cave lion. Panthera spelaea wasn't just impressive, it was the apex of the apex. It had been sitting at the very top of the European food chain for tens of thousands of years before Neanderthals ever pointed a spear at one. Every deer, every horse, every bison, every wild boar, every hyena, every bear cub it had ever killed and consumed. All of that accumulates, not just as calories, not just as muscle mass, but as chemistry, as biology, as a complete archive of everything that ever lived inside the things that lion ate, distilled and concentrated across decades, sitting in its tissue the night someone decided to cook it for dinner. Scientists have a term for this: biomagnification. The process by which persistent compounds, toxins, heavy metals, parasites, pathogens, accumulate in organisms and then transfer to the next level at even higher concentrations when something eats them. Every level up the food chain, the load gets denser. Every predator that eats prey inherits the full burden of everything the prey ever carried. An apex predator doesn't just inherit one level of that, it inherits all of them simultaneously. It is the end point of every accumulation chain in its ecosystem. And nobody at Siegsdorf, 48,000 years ago, knew any of this. The celebration that night was real. The status was real. The meal was real. What wasn't visible was what the meal was carrying. Let's go through it, because this is where it gets genuinely unsettling. Free-ranging wild lions of East Africa were surveyed by researchers in a study published in the Journal of Zoo and Wildlife Medicine. Their finding, 19 separate parasite species identified across the sample, not 19 across the whole population, 19 species from individual survey specimens. The categories alone tell you everything: protozoa, flatworms, tapeworms, roundworms, thorny-headed worms, arthropods, a full classification sweep. Every major category of internal parasite represented. Among them, Taenia regis, Taenia gonyamai, Taenia simbae, tapeworms named specifically after lion hosts, Spirometra spe, Echinococcus granulosus felidis, a tapeworm whose larvae, when they enter a human body through contaminated meat, form hydatid cysts, giant fluid-filled sacs, in the liver, in the lungs, in the brain, growing quietly, for years before symptoms appear, potentially fatal without surgery. Already documented in lion specimens from northern Transvaal and Rhodesia in historical wildlife surveys, and ancylostoma, hookworm, and Toxocara leonina, a roundworm documented in lions specifically, not in prey, in lions, named after them. But here's the one that nobody brings up, and the one that makes the whole story personal in a way you might not be prepared for. Lions are the definitive host of Toxoplasma gondii. Definitive host means this is where the parasite sexually reproduces. This is its home, its endpoint. This is where it wants to be. A lion's intestinal tract is Toxoplasma's preferred reproductive environment, which means a lion that has lived long enough and eaten enough prey has likely been carrying Toxoplasma for most of its adult life, not as a passenger, but as a thriving resident. And what does Toxoplasma do when it ends up in something that isn't a felid? Something like, for example, a human. It goes to the brain, literally. Toxoplasma gondii exhibits what researchers describe as a decided tropism for the brain and eyes, meaning it is specifically attracted to neural tissue. It forms cysts, it stays, it is not eliminated. The human immune system walls it off but cannot eradicate it. It becomes a permanent resident, latent, mostly silent, unless the immune system fails. And in the meantime, It does something specific to the behavior of its host that researchers spent decades arguing about before confirming with multiple peer-reviewed studies. It lowers anxiety. It increases exploratory behavior. It alters how the brain processes threat. Infected rodents, documented in multiple studies including work published in Cell Reports, literally lose their aversion to cat smell. A rat carrying toxoplasma will approach the smell of a predator rather than flee from it. The parasite manipulates the host's behavior to help get the host eaten by a cat, so the parasite can complete its reproductive cycle. It engineers its own transmission. Now here's the number that should land differently than it did 30 seconds ago. According to the CDC, over 40 million Americans are currently infected with Toxoplasma gondii. The global seroprevalence, according to a meta-analysis published in Science Direct, covering 658,172 individuals across 113 countries, sits at approximately 31%, 1 in 3 humans on Earth, carrying a parasite that originated in felids, in some form of latent brain cyst. Right now, comment "I didn't know this" below if that genuinely just changed something for you. Because most people don't, and the way it spreads today is mostly through undercooked meat and contaminated soil. Now imagine what happened when the vector wasn't undercooked grocery store chicken. It was the intestinal tissue of a cave lion that had been carrying it for 15 years. Now we need to talk about Trichinella, because the roundworm situation has its own chapter. Trichinella spiralis, documented in wild lions, documented in apex predators across Felidae and Canidae, is the parasite behind trichinellosis, a disease that begins with gastrointestinal symptoms, becomes nausea, becomes fever, becomes muscle pain. Then the larvae migrate. They insist in muscle tissue, diaphragm, tongue, jaw, eye muscles. The inflammation during the migration phase is documented as causing periorbital edema, the swelling around the eyes, cardiac inflammation, neurological symptoms. In severe cases, death. The entire disease pathway is triggered by eating infected raw or undercooked meat from a carnivore that had eaten other carnivores. An apex predator at the top of exactly the kind of biomagnification chain we described 4 minutes ago. Researchers at the Max Planck Institute cross-referenced the cut mark patterns on the Siegsdorf cave lion bones in detail. The marks are consistent with defleshing, removal of meat from the carcass. Some of the butchering involved the femur, leg muscle. Exactly the tissue where Trichinella larvae preferentially encyst. The lion was processed for meat. And the meat was the problem. Here's what makes this broader than one species at one site. The evidence for ancient humans hunting and eating cave lions isn't limited to Siegsdorf. Cut-marked lion bones were identified at Gran Dolina in Atapuerca, Spain, a site dated to marine isotope stage 9, between 300,000 and 400,000 years ago, associated with Homo heidelbergensis by researchers including Ruth Blasco, whose study appeared in the Journal of Archaeological Science. The cut marks at Gran Dolina include the femur, leg meat, and show gutting patterns identical to those used on deer, horses, and bison at the same site. Lions were processed as prey animals, not occasionally, not as a freak event. As part of a practice that appears across multiple sites, multiple species of hominin, multiple time periods. This was a behavior pattern, and every time it happened, the lion had been collecting things its entire life. Every animal it killed had been collecting things. And the human on the receiving end of the victory meal inherited the whole archive. What looked like winning the fight was just moving the fight inside. The cave lion went extinct approximately 14,000 years ago. The reasons are still debated. Climate shift, prey collapse, human hunting pressure, possibly all three. Panthera spelaea, gone. The Löwenmensch, the famous ivory carving of a human body with a lion's head, found at Hohensteinstadel Cave in Germany, dated to approximately 40,000 years ago, is the oldest known figurative sculpture in human history. A lion carved in mammoth ivory, worn teeth of cave lions found as personal ornaments. The animal appears in cave paintings across southern France. What ancient humans did with lions went far beyond meat. The lion was cultural, status, symbol, the thing you killed to become something more than what you were before you killed it. Except the lion was always doing something in return, not through intention, not through venom or aggression or tooth or claw after death, just through chemistry, through biology, through the patient accumulation of everything it had ever eaten, and the equally patient transfer of that archive to whatever ate it next. Toxoplasma is still in a third of humanity. Roundworms still circle. The parasites that moved through cave lion tissue tens of thousands of years ago belong to the same genera as the ones documented in modern wild lions today. The biology didn't change. The ancient humans just had no way to know it was there. The kill happened in a moment. The consequences happened over weeks, months, years. The victory meal wasn't the end of the story with the lion. It was just the moment the story moved from the outside to the inside. So the next time someone tells you ancient humans were tough, agree with them. They absolutely were. They killed cave lions with wooden spears and then ate them, and a significant portion of them probably survived it. That's not weakness. That's extraordinary. But there is a difference between surviving something and winning it. The lion that died at Siegsdorf 48,000 years ago took a few more people with it. Just quietly, and just slowly. In ways nobody at that celebration could see, standing around a fire, eating the thing that had been trying to eat them, believing, completely correctly, that they had won. What would you have done that night? Eat the lion or leave it? Tell me honestly in the comments.